I was 30 years old when my father grounded me like I was still a teenager. Not because I crashed a car. Not because I was reckless. Not because I embarrassed the family name. No, he grounded me because he believed I was weak. Because in his world, silence meant surrender, kindness meant incompetence, and anyone who didn't fight loudly didn't deserve to stand tall. My father was a billionaire. The kind of billionaire who didn't just own companies, he owned rooms. When he walked into a board meeting, grown men sat straighter without thinking. When he spoke, people rushed to agree before he finished his sentence. Our home felt less like a house and more like a private empire. Marble floors, silent staff, security gates, and hallways filled with paintings that celebrated his achievements. Everything about him was control. Everything about me was disappointment. At least in his eyes. That night, he called me into his study. The room smelled like leather and power. His desk was covered with contracts, financial projections, and a thick folder stamped with bold letters, $25 billion infrastructure deal. He didn't look up when I entered. He simply said, "Sit." I sat. He flipped through papers slowly, dragging out the silence like a weapon. Then he spoke. "You've been living beyond your means." I blinked. "What?" He finally looked up. His eyes were sharp, cold, certain. "The travel, the quiet connections, the way you move like you have leverage." I stayed calm. "I have my own income." He laughed. A billionaire laugh. Dismissive, amused, cruel. "No, you don't," he snapped. "You have my last name. That's what you have." The words hit, but I didn't react. That irritated him more. He leaned forward. "This deal," he said, tapping the folder, "is my legacy. $25 billion. The biggest AI partnership this country has ever seen." He paused. "And I will not have you ruining it." I frowned slightly. "Ruining it how?" "You don't belong in these circles," he said flatly. "You don't have discipline. You don't have the hunger. You're soft. Soft. Always that word." He stood abruptly, towering behind the desk. "So here's what's going to happen. You will stay on this property. No meetings. No outside calls. No mysterious projects." I stared at him. "You're grounding me." "Yes," he said without shame. "I'm cutting you off." The staff outside the door stood still, pretending not to hear. In this house, his voice was law. I should have argued. I should have shouted that I was 30. That he couldn't control me. But I didn't. I simply nodded. Understood. That confused him. He expected tears or rebellion. Instead, I turned and walked out. Behind me, his voice rose. "This is for your own good." I didn't stop, because the truth was, my father didn't know who he was talking to. He thought I was powerless. He thought grounding me would reduce me to nothing. What he didn't know was that the $25 billion deal on his desk was built on technology that didn't belong to him. It belonged to me. That night, I sat alone in the guest wing, the city glowing beyond the iron gates. My phone vibrated once. A secure encrypted thread. No name. Just one letter. X. A message appeared. "Proceed?" I typed 5 words. Pause all capital. Immediately. 3 dots. Then. Understood. Executing now. I set the phone down and exhaled. Because by morning, my father would learn what silence really meant. Not weakness. Control. The next day began with perfect billionaire calm. Breakfast served on porcelain. Staff moving like shadows. An illusion of stability. Then the shouting started. I heard it from down the hall. Phones ringing. A lawyer's frantic voice. I stepped toward the foyer just as my father stormed into view. Suit half buttoned, rage sharp in his posture. "What do you mean they pulled out?" he barked into the phone. He paused. His face tightened. "I don't care what time it is. Get them back." Another pause. Then his expression changed. Not anger. Fear. He lowered the phone slowly. At that moment, his head attorney burst through the doors like the house was burning. "Sir." My father turned. "What now?" The lawyer's hands were shaking. "The AI deal." My father snarled. "It's signed." The lawyer swallowed hard. "That's the problem." Silence. My father's voice dropped. "Explain." The lawyer forced the words out. The silent partner behind the infrastructure withdrew overnight. My father froze. "That's impossible." The lawyer hesitated, then glanced at me. "They refused to speak to anyone except her." My father followed his gaze. For the first time that morning, he truly looked at me. Not as a child, not as an embarrassment, but as something unknown. My lips curved slightly. "Good morning, Dad." And I watched the first crack form in his empire. My father didn't speak for a moment. He stood there in the foyer, billionaire confidence draining from his face like color from paper. His attorney swallowed again, voice trembling. They pulled every wire transfer, sir. Every compliance guarantee. Every escrow account tied to the AI deal. My father's jaw tightened hard enough to ache. That partner is locked, he snapped. They can't just walk away. The lawyer hesitated. They can when the controlling owner orders it. My father turned slowly toward me. His eyes narrowed, sharp with disbelief. You? I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply said the truth. I told you I wasn't pretending. His voice rose instantly, anger rushing in to cover fear. This is ridiculous. You don't own anything big enough to touch my deal. The attorney lifted a tablet with shaking hands. Sir, she does. My father spun on him. Stop. The lawyer tapped the screen. Corporate registry. Beneficial ownership. Encrypted holding structure. And at the top, my name. My father stared. The air went still. No, he whispered. That's not possible. It's verified, the lawyer said carefully. She is the majority shareholder of Nexus AI Holdings. My father's breathing grew heavier. Nexus AI, the silent engine behind his $25 billion partnership. The firm no one ever saw, but everyone depended on. He looked at me again, slower now. How long? I answered calmly. Long enough that your deal was never really yours. His face hardened. You've been hiding money. I shook my head. I've been hiding from you. The words landed like a clean blade. My father's voice cracked. You expect me to believe you built an AI firm without my knowledge? I held his gaze. You never wanted knowledge. You wanted control. He stepped closer, towering. I am your father. And I am not a child, I said softly. That sentence shifted something in the room. Staff stood frozen. Security avoided eye contact. Even the walls seemed to listen. My father's attorney spoke again, urgent. Sir, there's more. The withdrawal triggered the exit clause. My father's head snapped. What clause? The lawyer's throat bobbed. The one that voids the deal instantly if funding is removed. My father went still. That clause was supposed to be impossible to activate. The attorney hesitated, then looked at me. It wasn't impossible, sir. He forced the words out. It was designed. My father's gaze shot back. You wrote it? I didn't deny it. I built the partnership framework. The safeguards, the compliance triggers. I leaned in slightly. Because I knew men like you would try to own what they didn't understand. My father exploded. You ungrateful. Do you know what I gave you? His voice shook the foyer. I didn't raise mine. You gave me a roof. I nodded toward the contract folder. But you never gave me respect. Silence. His anger faltered for half a second. Fear slipped through. He whispered, almost unwilling. Why didn't you tell me? I answered simply. Because you only listen when you can take credit. That hurt him more than shouting ever could. By noon, the estate had turned into a crisis bunker. Phones rang nonstop. Executives arrived in black cars. Lawyers crowded the halls. News alerts began to surface like sharks. Hartwell-I deal in jeopardy. $25 billion partnership uncertain. My father's empire, built on perception, was trembling under public doubt. And through it all, I walked calmly. Because the real revenge wasn't destruction. It was inevitability. My father stormed into my wing that evening, tie loosened, face pale. This ends now, he snapped. I looked up from my laptop. He slammed his hand on my desk. You will restore the funding. There it was. Not apology. Not remorse. Demand. I closed the laptop slowly. Fix it, he said again, voice cracking. Do you understand what happens if this collapses? I met his eyes. Do you understand what happens if it doesn't? His brows furrowed. What? It means you get richer, I said softly. And you keep believing I'm nothing. His voice rose. This isn't personal. I let out a quiet laugh. That's the problem, Dad. I stood. For you, nothing is personal. People are pieces. Children are accessories. I stepped closer. Legacy is everything, until the piece moves on its own. His face twisted. What do you want? There it was again. The first real question. I held his gaze. I want you to stop grounding me. His throat tightened. I want you to stop controlling me. He whispered, desperate now. If you destroy this deal, you destroy me. I shook my head slowly. No. I leaned in, voice like steel. You destroyed yourself the moment you mistook silence for submission. The next morning, the board convened an emergency session. Not at the estate. Not under my father's roof. At headquarters. Neutral ground. A place where money mattered more than ego. My father walked in expecting authority. But the room didn't rise for him. They rose for me. That was when his face finally cracked. The chairman cleared his throat. We have one question. He looked directly at me. Are you willing to restore the partnership under revised governance? My father's jaw clenched. I answered calmly, yes. Hope flashed in my father's eyes. Until I continued, but not with him in charge. The room went silent. My father's voice erupted. You can't do this. I turned slowly. I already did. The chairman nodded. Then we proceed. He looked around. All in favor of removing him as acting CEO. Hands began to rise. 1, 2, 3. My father stood frozen. No. More hands. The vote became unstoppable. The chairman spoke with finality. Motion passed. My father's voice broke. You're firing me? I met his eyes. No, Dad. I leaned forward slightly. I'm grounding you. The room held its breath. My father's empire had finally met someone it couldn't control. And the worst part for him was that it was his own child. My father didn't speak as the board members lowered their hands. He simply stared at them, like he was waiting for someone to laugh and reveal it was all a misunderstanding. But no one laughed, because billionaires aren't untouchable in boardrooms. They're only tolerated until they become a liability. The chairman's voice was calm. Effective immediately, your access is suspended pending investigation and transition. My father's head snapped up. Investigation? He spat. For what? The chairman didn't flinch. For governance failures. For misrepresentation of partnership control. For risking a $25 billion deal under personal conflict. My father's eyes burned. This is her doing, he hissed, pointing at me. She orchestrated this. I didn't deny it. I simply said, you orchestrated it the day you decided I could be grounded at 30. The room went silent again. My father's throat worked, searching for words that still held power. But the board had already moved past emotion. Money doesn't care about pride. The chairman looked at me. If you restore Nexus funding today, we can salvage the contract before markets open tomorrow. I nodded once. It will be restored. My father's eyes widened. Relief tried to rise. Until I added quietly, under one condition. The chairman leaned in. Name it. I turned my gaze toward my father. He resigns. Publicly. Permanently. The air froze. My father's voice cracked. You would destroy your own blood for a condition? I tilted my head slightly. You destroyed me for control. That was the difference. He thought it was war. I knew it was consequence. The chairman spoke carefully. That condition will likely be accepted. My father's chest rose and fell rapidly. Then he did something I had never seen. He begged. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just raw. Please. The word came out like it hurt. He looked at me, eyes sharp but drowning. You don't understand what you're taking. I stepped closer. I understand exactly. I lowered my voice. I'm taking my life back. His jaw trembled. I built everything. I nodded. You built an empire. I paused. But you built it on the assumption that I was nothing. I leaned in. That assumption just collapsed. That afternoon, the press release went out. Founder steps down amid strategic transition. The headlines tried to soften it. But the business world understood. A king had been removed. And the person holding the keys wasn't a rival. It was his own child. My father stood in front of cameras, suit crisp, eyes hollow. I am stepping aside, he read, voice tight. For the stability of the company. He didn't look at me. He couldn't, because looking at me meant admitting the truth. He never knew who I was. Nexus funding restored within hours. The AI deal stabilized. Markets calmed. Executives exhaled. And my father returned to his estate no longer as a ruler, but as a man with too much silence. That night, he called me. One call. No anger. No commands. Just a tired voice. I thought grounding you would make you stop. I listened. He continued quietly. I didn't know you were the ground beneath me. I didn't respond immediately, because part of me had wanted this. To hear him finally say it. To hear him finally see me. He whispered. How long have you been building it? I answered truthfully. Since the day you taught me I couldn't depend on you. Silence. Then his voice cracked. You did it without me. Yes. And you succeeded? His voice faltered, without needing my approval. Yes. The word felt final. A door closing. He whispered, almost to himself. I made my own child my enemy. I corrected him softly. No. I paused. You made your own child invisible. Another silence. Then he asked the last question he had left. Do you hate me? I stared out at the city lights from my own apartment. The city I now controlled more than he understood. And I answered honestly. I don't have space for hate. His breath shook. Then what do you have? I let the truth settle. Freedom. Weeks passed. The company moved on. The deal became history. And in the financial world, people began whispering a new name. Not his. Mine. Not because I demanded it, but because results speak louder than bloodlines. My father remained wealthy, but wealth without power feels like exile. He stayed in the mansion. Grounded, not by me, by the consequences of his own arrogance. And I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw parties. I didn't post victories. I simply lived, because the greatest revenge wasn't humiliating him. It was proving that his control was never real. That the soft child he underestimated had quietly built the technology that held his empire together. And the moment he tried to cage me, the cage became his. The final board meeting of the quarter ended with the chairman shaking my hand. "Welcome," he said, "to the future." I nodded. Then I walked out into the sunlight. No guards stopping me, no gates holding me, no father grounding me, just open air, and one thought that felt like a closing line written by fate. He grounded me at 30, not knowing I was the one holding the sky.